Today's video is sponsored by Very Many Cups on Patreon. Hashaton versus Samut, Glarb and Saheeli. So decent number of new commanders here. We have a 3-lander to start off with, a discard outlet and some stuff to reanimate. We're missing blue mana, so do we draw into blue mana quickly enough is the question. I'm going to try this one. Alright, well that's our first few turns sorted out then. Wayfarer's Bauble we will make use of just in case we don't naturally get into the blue mana. We don't necessarily want to windmill slam out our Hashaton until we can actually make use of it anyway. Okay, the teamer player has just passed straight through the turn, so I'm hoping that we don't see a shame scoop here, because that might have been an accident, might have been a misclick. Yeah, discarded a land to hand size, so it was an accident. Glarb plays a Rampant Growth. Arcane Signet for Samut has not managed to get the engine started yet. Alright, yeah, and we weren't going to draw into blue mana quickly enough for the Ghostly Pilferer, so just get down the basic and crack the Wayfarer's Bauble straight away. There is a Field of the Dead over here now as well, and the first commander is the Frog Wizard Noble. This guy reminds me of Poppadaya, is he called, from, oh god, what's that program called? Disney Amphibia. Reminds me of Pop Pop from Amphibia. Anyway, this player got down a Boseiju as a land, and Toski, Bearer of Secrets, will begin to swing in next turn and start drawing some cards. Should be able to deal with that easily enough with a Toxrill. I think we need to be looking at getting out Consecrated Sphinx first. And Undercity Sewers, so when we did get into a blue mana it was a tap land anyway. We want to play a tap land regardless here, so get down the Ghostly Pilferer, and that means that we'll have 5 mana next turn ready to throw down the Hashaton, discard something to the Pilferer and reanimate something all in one turn hopefully. So get down Undercity Sewers, and there's a Hallowed Fountain. Don't think I mind getting into another land. We've got decent discard fodder in hand and that will help fix our colours even better. Might need a surplus of mana in this deck. One to actually be able to pay for the activation cost, but also to be able to recast Hashaton, assuming that it dies pretty quickly or gets countered, is more of a concern, because once it hits play, even if they remove it, we can at least reanimate something, assuming that this stays in play. Phyrexian Metamorph comes down as a clone of something, makes it an indestructible Toski. That will have to swing in every single turn though, so the indestructible might not be too useful, but maybe the aim of this Saheeli deck is to get a lot of artifact Thopters and things like that into play, so maybe we'll make use of this eventually. A Surveil 2 from the Glarb for the first time, and I think that was just a Simic Growth Chamber, maybe it was the Swamp as well. He's got 3 Swamps and the Rampant Growth in the bin at the moment. And then we see an Echoing Deeps, which comes in as a copy of a land in a graveyard, so it uses that to become a bounce land. Taps the island for mana, so no doubt he's going to bounce that back. And then we see a Realms Uncharted, so he's able to look for a bunch of lands and give someone a difficult decision. Noteworthy we've played Urborg, so we could go and grab Cabal Coffers here. He chose us, so we choose the cards to put into his graveyard. Yeah, so there's Thespian Stage, Dark Depths, so we want to separate those really. I have no doubt we'll be able to grab them back anyway. Shifting Woodland can become a copy of something that we put in the bin anyway, so yeah, I think we'll put Shifting Woodland in the bin, then it doesn't matter what we throw in the graveyard. And Thespian Stage can go in the graveyard as well. That way Thespian Stage can't become a copy of the Field of the Dead. He did discard an island hand size as well. He can still tap the Dark Depths for mana, unfortunately, thanks to the Urborg, so it's not quite as useless in his hand. But obviously the Shifting Woodland becoming a copy of something in the bin makes the stuff in the graveyard more relevant, so throwing that away is hopefully going to deter him from making use of that for a few turns. A Springheart Nantuko goes on to a legendary creature, so they can make insects out of this, but I wouldn't have thought they'd want to make copies of the Toski. Anyway, the 2-2 swings in towards us. We're certainly not going to block with our 2-1 discard outlet. So they do get to draw a card, see if they can make landfall or not. They do manage to. And there's a champion of Lamholt, so that does care about lots of tokens entering. Might have to get Toxrill down sooner than later. So in that case we want... I'll try not to shock in the Hallowed Fountain, we might have to next turn. I'm trying to keep hold of a Ganjo for as long as possible for obvious reasons. So we'll get out the Gaia Reach Sanitarium. Might dissuade people from getting rid of our sack outlet if they think we've got one on a land anyway. Obviously we'd rather not pay for it though. So hopefully be able to land Hashaton here. And then as much as I want to get down Toxrill, I think I want to take advantage of Consecrated Sphinx. And if we lose our commander, then at least we've refilled our hand. So let's discard the Sphinx. Puts our commander's trigger on the stack. Obviously we pay 3 here. Really don't want to be playing out our commander if we can't make use of the ability straight away. And the Pilferer can't be blocked this turn. I don't think we need to worry about holding up blockers. And I don't think we're going to be putting the 2 mana into drawing with this, especially if we can keep the Sphinx in play. But let's show our opponent that we're going to fight back. And worst case scenario for our opponents, they allow us to hold all this up and leave our board alone through to the next turn, and then we can get Toxrill down as well and really start to deal with our opponent's side of the field. And there was a Deadly Rollick from the Glarb player, so might not have Hashaton survive. We did give them a target outside of our commander at least, but do not get to refill our hand with this. I dare say they might have done that to Toxrill anyway, maybe not because this has 4 toughness, but we just definitely wanted to be drawing into more cards if we could. Might have to rely on this thing in order to do that. Sculpting Steel comes down as a copy of Arcane Signet, so maybe it's a clone deck that our opponent's gone for. Another clone in Copy Artifact, and that is another Arcane Signet. 4 cards left in hand, and the 1/1 swings in towards Glarb in order to draw. So that's 4 cards we've missed out on. Surveil on the Glarb again. And this time bins a Swamp and a Farseek. We see Argoth, Sanctum of Nature, you don't see that one too often. And they've got access to the Titania as well. So might be able to merge those. We have managed to keep hold of our Hashaton so far though, so hopefully we'll be able to discard some more stuff. Playing another land in order to make an insect. Over here we've got Arena of Glory as well. I don't think they've exerted though. Might be seeing the commander here. We've seen Jeska's Will first, so exiled some cards. Nope, they don't have their commander in play yet, do they? So that was just 5 red mana. And now we see the commander. 1 mana floating and a land available. Does draw us in 2 Swords to Plowshares because they played a card that wasn't from their hand. Getting their speed up for the first time though. It should go up to level 2 here. 3/2 comes in at us because we've only got a 3 toughness creature. In fact, yeah, the insect's coming in at us as well, and the Champion of Lamholt, a 4/3, goes into the left. The Samut is a 4/5 with First Strike, Vigilance and Haste. That goes to the left as well. And now they've pulled back the Champion, taking it down the middle. So offering up the trade there. A 3/4 versus a 4/3. So they got First Strike damage and the Toski trigger with Samut first, and now they've drawn up to 7 again, thanks to the Indestructible Squirrel. Well, unbelievably, managed to untap with our commander, so what we could do here is draw a card with the Pilferer, hold up Swords to Plowshares, and still discard into Hashaton. I'm not sure I necessarily want to play this out straight away while we've already got a discard outlet available to us, but it is a means of drawing. So I think I will actually. It turns out that swinging in with that did make a difference. I think I will actually pay into this. That gets us into an Ashen Rider. And then a Sol Ring. So I think I do just want to shock down the Hallowed Fountain then in that case. Or do we even need to? We can get it down as a tap land, can't we? Which means the island gets tapped for a blue mana for the Sol Ring. Just need to pray that this lands. And it does. Yeah, and I think we get down the Toxrill straight away because it cares about end steps. So discard Toxrill, triggers the Hashaton obviously, and we pay the mana into that, holding up our Swords to Plowshares. I suppose once again, if we're not going to be blocking with it, we might want to put the mana into it, especially with a surplus of mana with a Sol Ring. So swinging in with this again, go down the middle, look like we're being reactionary. Might be that we can get this player to put the 4 mana into trying to meld and then go for the Swords to Plowshares there. So at the end of the turn, a slime counter on each creature we don't control. And each of them gets -1/-1. For every one that dies, it's a slug token, so we get 3 of those. Which means that this board isn't really going to survive until the next turn. The Samut will, but it won't have anything to swing in with. Clever Impersonator can come down as a copy of something that might have to eat our Swords to Plowshares, because he's going to use that to take down our Ghostly Pilferer. That does mean more debuffs on these things. The Toski with its 2 toughness did actually die there. These 2 players are getting -2/-2 on their slug creatures, or slug counter creatures. It does mean that this will trigger at the end of the turn, and we will start getting -1/-1 as well though. So we have to go for the swords onto this, which is unfortunate because I was holding it up for this stuff. He might have some kind of counter magic, which means we'll be relying on the discard outlet from this after all. Cycling with the Sheltered Thicket is probably alright. It might be that he was fishing for free counter magic there, which could be telling. Anyway, ends with a slug token, which won't last long. So a couple more creatures die for us. The Springheart Nantuko is in the graveyard as well. And Titania is melded into this thing, or they don't have to pay for it apparently, they just needed the things in the graveyard. So this is now a 4/4, power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. Return all the lands when it's melded, which is why I wanted to get rid of it. But we didn't have the swords held up anymore. So they get a bunch of lands into the Field of the Dead, making a bunch of zombies. And they've now got access to the Thespian Stage and the Shifting Woodland. We know that they've got the Dark Depths in hand, so they might throw that down next turn and make the token straight away. That's a 20/20 Flying Indestructible for anyone who doesn't know the combo. Their tokens aren't going to last long, at least, with the Toxrill, assuming that stays in play. Got 6 cards in hand. Every chance that they'll have some kind of interaction for us. Surveils a couple of lands into the bin, including a bounce land. The bounce lands are good in Lands Matter. For anyone who doesn't know, you can play them and bounce them to their own trigger. Cycles away a Tranquil Thicket as well. And if you've got multiple land drops a turn, then you can just play and bounce the same land for as many land drops as you have in a turn. Good for triggering things like Field. Okay, using the Thespian Stage now. As we said before, we held him off Field of the Dead triggers, multiple Field of the Dead triggers for a while there, but he does decide to just make use of this straight away. So he's got 2 of those. Can still copy the Dark Depths if he wants to, but he'll have to sacrifice this in order to get the token. So this thing now an 11/11. Does have haste, so he could swing in with it. And we can exile a permanent with this, so it could be worth getting rid of the Field of the Dead. Samut, now the only creature in play over here, will need another turn cycle in order to get rid of that thing. And we need until the end of this turn to get rid of Glarb as well. They can get their speed up to 3 at least though, still have 1 power over there. And it does go into the left in order to do that. So they'll have an even bigger discount with a full grip of 7 in hand. Not sure they'll want to use X spells to play lots of tokens though. Not until the Toxrill is dealt with. And there is something that will deal with the big creatures. Elspeth can tick down, and it does. So gets rid of our token Toxrill, unfortunately. But we can maybe go wide and deal with the Elspeth. They might have instants that can make lots of tokens, so we'll have to not overexert ourselves into that. Alright, so I think I will draw a card to the Pilferer here. And that is a Frantic Search, which is effectively free. We also draw into an Overlord of the Flood Pits, which will cost us 5 mana. Can obviously go for this for 3 mana for a bit of insurance, although it takes a long time for it to become a creature. Oftentimes isn't relevant as a creature if you impend it. So I think I'll go for Frantic Search instead, which means we can play at instant speed. We could use a Ganjo actually to get rid of Samut here, although it's got First Strike, so that won't work. I was hoping they could block with a Slug token. We deal 1 damage and deal the 4 with a Ganjo, but that doesn't work. I think we're fine to try and get rid of our opponent's Elspeth here. I think they might have some kind of X spell that can put blockers in the way, but we'll test them on that. So hopefully just a couple of creatures is enough. We could make this unblockable as well and go straight through, but I'll risk it. trying to test my opponent for some kind of interaction here. And if they allow Elspeth to go down, which they do, then it encourages me to use Ashen Rider to get rid of the Field of the Dead. So I think we'll do that at instant speed. Let's just play a Ganjo as a land for the turn. Want all the lands we can get our hands on, especially in Esper. So yeah, it would be good to be able to go for Overlord of the Flood Pits, but maybe we can do that next turn. I think I'll either go Frantic Search or Gaia Reach Sanitarium, get down Ashen Rider, I think. Nothing to stop us getting both of these flyers down, depending on how the turn goes. Saheeli, Radiant Creator, into play for the first time. There's been a lack of energy recurring over here. Ghostly Pilferer draws us again into a Solemn Simulacrum. Wouldn't be the worst thing to upgrade this to a 4/4 maybe. And then Aetherworks Marvel. Whenever a permanent you control is put into the graveyard, get an energy. And they get an energy for casting that with Saheeli. Alright, so at the end step, I think we'll just go for the Frantic Search and I can look at more cards with that. We see a couple of lands, so I think I like the cards that are in hand, so get rid of a Godless Shrine. And we'll play the Ashen Rider here with the Hashaton. Before we pay for the ability on this is noteworthy. The Frantic Search has to fully resolve first, so we untap the lands first, which can be relevant if you're struggling on mana. You do get the 3 mana back to pay the 3 mana for Hashaton, so that's worth knowing for anyone who didn't. So of course we pay that. Ashen Rider can exile lands, so definitely go after Field of the Dead. We'll have to be careful killing this thing off because we can get rid of something like Thespian Sage as well. And our opponent still has to be wary of what we might be able to reanimate here, so the zombie tokens might still swing in towards us. It's noteworthy that they still have the slug tokens on them, or the slug counters, so if we were able to reanimate Toxrill, which we might be able to, those counters could still be relevant. Surveil again, because the Glarb managed to survive unfortunately, and throws away a Spelunking. A command tower is in the bin as well. They still have 1 field left, and Dark Depths does enter play, can still tap for mana, but we have to be wary of the 2020 flyer. Should be able to hopefully hold this back as a blocker against it, so it will at least get exiled if they decide to have us block with this. Dryad of the Elysian Grove will fix the colours and give them additional land drops every turn. Cracks Misty Rainforest for another zombie token and a land drop. And played another land from hand. That was a Manamo, so can untap a legendary permanent with that, which is good for surveilling. Emergent Ultimatum is a means of searching for 3 cards similar to the card we saw previously, and then an opponent gives you a difficult decision. He's played that from outside his hand somehow. I'm not sure how he's played that from anywhere other than his hand, but it's triggering our Ghostly Pilferer, so we will see if we get into some kind of counter magic. Instead it is a Rhystic Study, so we'll have to allow this. Suppose we could have gone Overlord of the Flood Pits to try and draw into some means of countering it, but there's more than one powerful player at the table here, and sometimes it's good to have your opponents be having their eye drawn away from you. We'll see how well that plays out for us. And chooses the Teamer player to make the decision. I think these are the cards we're looking at. There's an Ancient Green Warden, Lumra, and a Toxrill of his own. So we're seeing lots of Toxrill here. I think I would personally shuffle Toxrill back, but this player doesn't necessarily struggle with a Toxrill in play, although he might do if he wants to see his commander more than a few turn cycles. He chose the Ancient Green Warden, so yeah, decided to allow him to cast Lumra and the Toxrill. Draw off both of those. We're getting a lot of use out of the Ghostly Pilferer here. Don't usually get to draw too many off that. Alright, a Ravenous Chupacabra is actually really good. That can blow up the Toxrill. Isolated Chapel is a land that we can make as well as discard fodder. So Lumra enters, mill 4, and return all lands from graveyard to battlefield tapped. Luckily we exiled the Field of the Dead previously, but they'll get multiple landfall triggers still. So that is 2, 4, 6 and 7 lands that they just got into play, including a bounce land. The Golgari Rot Farm is going to bounce a land back to hand. And I don't even want to see the slug counter on the stack with this. So that's at the beginning of each end step, so I'll have to do our Ravenous Chupacabra thing during the second main. When he passes priority over to us, we'll assume that the turn's done. In the bin now, somehow, is Azusa, Rite of Replication, and the Meat Hut Massacre. Then Field of the Dead becomes a copy of the Dark Depths now. Yeah, so he sacrificed the Thespian stage, the Dark Depths died to the Legend rule. So, yeah, there it is. Ended up with Marit Lage, a Flying Indestructible 2020, giving up on the Field of the Dead at least. Haven't seen combat yet. I'm assuming all the 8/8s are coming in towards us when he's got plenty of blockers to hold back. Well, a couple of them are going in to the right. Yeah, he's spreading the damage seemingly, so 8 of it is coming in towards us. 2 to the left, 2 to the right. So we can block at least one of them. They don't have any keywords, so that's 6 damage to us, I think is pretty reasonable actually. Want to keep as many blockers in play for the potential big swing in towards us next turn. So each of the commanders block 1, 2 damage goes through to either of our opponents. And that means a creature dies, so they do get a slug token. Forgot about that, so that's one that they shouldn't have if we were going to get rid of Toxrill here anyway. Oh, Samut's ended up in the bin. Oh, of course it would have been debuffed, wouldn't it, from all these slug tokens, so that's gone down. Has damage been dealt here already? Yeah, and there was no first strike damage to deal apparently. So we can still go through to the second main, and it looks as though we've got priority straight away, so I'll just double check this can destroy any creature an opponent controls, and Toxrill doesn't have ward or anything like that. We get an upgraded 4/4 Ravenous Chupacabra, getting rid of this thing, and that way we can keep the slug tokens at bay, as well as keeping our slug tokens in play. Didn't even mean to rhyme that, just call me MC Kai. Idol of Oblivion, so he is looking to make tokens in this list. Just wasn't lucky enough to have them in hand with his commander in play, unfortunately. So that's a pretty easy turn for the Naya player. Passes straight through the turn near enough. Now I think it's going to be wise for us to get down the Overlord of the Flood Pits into play, just so that we've got 2 flyers, just in case this thing is dealt with somehow, because we are facing down the 2020. Draw into another land. So, yeah, let's go for the Flood Pit straight away. Problem is, if we go for reanimating something here, then we can't surprise our opponents. We'll see what we draw into. That might be some interaction that we can hold up at instant speed. Might dictate what we discard here. Alright, Bitter Triumph isn't the worst. I like Nezahal for keeping our hand full as well. Do we just do that here and hope we survive a turn? There's a lot of zombies to contend with next turn, but we can't do anything about those anyway. So yeah, I think we discard the Nezahal, trigger our commander now, and get a copy of the Nezahal into play. Let's go for potentially a blue mana, or we can maybe go for the white and blue Surveil land with this, and that way we've got the Bitter Triumph held up as well, just in case we need it. So yeah, passing at that should be fine. I'm not sure I really want to be swinging in with all those zombie tokens, unfortunately. This is going to be a long one, I think, but we're edging our way closer and closer to being able to get into some means of mass reanimation, hopefully. Or at least grabbing the Toxrill back with an Animate Dead or something like that would be good. Gonti's Ether Heart. Whenever this or another artifact enters, you get a couple of energy, so that is a good means of buffing up your energy supply. Draws us a card, gets us into another land. Another artifact came in after that in the form of an artifact land. Darksteel Citadel is indestructible, so they get a couple of energy they can make. With the 6 energy, they can make a copy of something here. With the commander, yeah, it is 3 energy to copy something. Okay, unfortunately the Samut player just disconnected, so that usually means that they've gone AFK and just quit the game, and they don't press concede when they do it for some reason. Might be a genuine disconnection, so just have to see what happens here, but might be that Samut's going down. Yep, so he does go down as we suspected. And now seeing a bespoke battle wagon, so they can gain energy from that as well. Played that from outside of their hand somehow. Again, I'm not... Oh, it must have been from the Aetherworks Marvel. So it's a non-creature spell. We draw with Nezahal, and it's from outside the hand, so we draw with the Pilferer. And there is another cheap means of a discard outlet finally, so don't have to rely on this if we don't want to. Otawara will cost 3 to bounce something, unless we can... Oh, actually, maybe 2 with Nezahal, so we might actually be able to make use of this. Anyway, they make more energy with the battle wagon and then go through to combat, and deciding to look at making a copy of the battle wagon, which makes sense because they can just tap it for energy straight away. Although they go down an energy doing that, so well, maybe it doesn't make sense. Oh no, they don't. This isn't on cast, it's upon entry. So they go up a mana, up an energy doing it. Well, instead they decide to draw a card anyway, so they're down to 1 energy, 3 cards in hand and 3 mana held up. Have to sacrifice the copy at the end of the turn, and that gains them an energy as well, so yeah, not doing too bad, but not really affecting his board all that much, unfortunately. I found much as I like the new Saheeli, I found this deck really, really clunky, to be honest. I don't think we have that much energy support even now. It's been a long time since energy was introduced, but we're still looking for even more support, funnily enough. Now, can our opponent, with a full grip of 7 and plenty of mana held up, do lots of damage to us with zombie tokens? He's going straight through to combat, so I wouldn't have thought he'd be looking for a board wipe, but maybe. The Vigilance 16/16 with reach, and yeah, just Vigilance and reach goes into the left. The 20/20, they are going to force us to block with the Ashen Rider and exile that, and then they're spreading the damage with the tokens seemingly. This group is going in to the left, and we're getting the vast majority of them. So we could use Otawara to bounce the Marit Lage, I suppose. Let's go crack Windswept Heath. How much does this cost? It's definitely 2, isn't it? Yeah, it is 2. Making sure I'm not miscalculating before I go for a blue mana with this. So we'll just have to make it a Tundra. Thanks to it being in the late game and we have a surplus of mana, we can get rid of the land and bounce the Marit Lage. This allows us to not only block something else, but it keeps the Ashen Rider in play, so that we can exile something else potentially down the line. So now we go through to blocks, and we've got... I wish they would put a number on these to tell you how many you're actually looking at taking. I think it's a group of 5 here, and a group of 6 on the left. I'll block the non-slug countered ones first. Might actually be 7 here. Does it tell you if you right click it? It doesn't. It's so difficult to tell. I think it's actually 7 to the left, and then we've got 1 coming through as well. So I think it's finally time to start chump blocking with slugs, unfortunately. So that means that we've got 6 coming through. I'll keep hold of some slug tokens. Yeah, we'll take 6. That should be alright, hopefully. Saheeli is blocking a zombie token, so he's going to take the 16 damage from the big bear. So we're down to 18. Saheeli is down to 11. Don't have the Field of the Dead to worry about anymore, at least. Can't make a copy of it while it's in exile, as far as I'm aware. They finally get down the Planar Nexus that we gave them eons ago. Time to see if they have some kind of board wipe or something. Tapping down a bunch of mana into something. Tapping down all their mana into this one thing. Oh, that's a shame. Well, a win's a win. Can we draw? Oh, we could draw into a counterspell here, that would be funny. Nope, it is an Agent of Treachery. I don't think we can draw any more here. Yeah, there's just nothing we can do about that. For all the cards we drew, we didn't get into the counter magic, unfortunately, so our opponent wins this one. It's a shame for it to end to an Exsanguinate, but I did ask for powerful game here, and we did get a lot of interaction. Also got to show off Hashaton, so can't really complain. I only ever want to show what the decks can do. And I think even Saheeli got to show off a bit of what you can do on that last turn there, so yeah, a good game all round, I think. Hashaton Scarab's Fist continues to do very powerful stuff. It's not quite as fast as Lands Matter, unfortunately. You really do need to be getting into the endgame in a typical Esper deck, and Hashaton seems to be no exception. As ever, hopefully you all enjoyed this one. Please consider donating on Patreon if you did, and a big shout out goes to those of you who do already. Deck list is in the description along with the link to Patreon if you do want to look at those. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.